Hello again. We all of us like to pose as being thoughtful, compassionate, and ethical individuals, determined to do the right thing no matter the cost. Few of us are really like that, of course, but we can often project such an image at no inconvenience or cost to ourselves. This can, for example, be achieved by putting a poster in one's window saying, "Refugees welcome here," or perhaps banging pots and pans in our front garden to signal support for the NHS, or possibly by flying a Ukrainian flag, or even just altering our Facebook profile to feature the colours of the flag. Such exhibitions cost us nothing, but serve to show the world that we are men and women of goodwill, that we care. Making a fetish of our good nature in this way is harmless enough in the usual way of things, but there comes a time when it can cause real problems and even threaten life and limb. Ukraine is just such a case. To begin with, it is clear that supposed concern about the suffering of the Ukrainian people and our determination to stick up for them is really no more than a performance, a show for our neighbours, and that there's also a large element of self-interest involved. For the last 30 years or more, the Russians have been invading and bombing European countries without anybody in this country caring in the slightest. Hand on heart, how many readers can remember the Russian invasion of Georgia, also a European country, in 2008? What about the destruction of the city of Grozny in 1994? Also by Russian forces, with a civilian death toll numbering in the tens of thousands. We ignored those wars because they were far enough away not to concern us. I'll warrant most of us would be hard-pressed to find places like South Ossetia on a map. What does it matter if cities like in places like that or Chechnya are reduced to rubble? Ukraine is different. It is a bit too close to countries that we have heard of, places like Poland. Time to sit up and take notice, and perhaps wring our hands when the bombs start falling there. This phony morality is about to come back and bite us in the most unpleasant way, because having pretended to care so deeply about the country, we have now been bounced into committing huge sums of money, and have felt obliged also to raise our spending on the armed forces as a direct result of the war in Ukraine. Although this is described as spending on defence, that's really a barefaced lie. We are not, and nor are we ever likely to, be planning to defend ourselves against the Russians. We already have a defence. Our nuclear missile submarines do that quite adequately. As long as we can destroy a dozen of their major cities, the Ivans won't attack us. The so-called defence spending will be so that we can plan for taking part in foreign adventures. Since we know that the country's finances, this country that is, Britain, are in a dreadful state, so dreadful, we are told, that the old people's winter fuel allowance had to be abolished, do viewers think that the billions of pounds being planned for soldiers and weapons is going to come from? The answer is that already plans are being drawn up for cuts in public services to pay for the expansion of the armed forces. In real and practical terms, this will mean less money being spent on things such as the NHS and more on armaments. Those cuts in expenditure on public services are going to cost lives here in Britain. We have been hoisted by our own petard, and those years of crying out in anguish at the plight of those plucky Ukrainians has put us in a position of being pledged to support them no matter what. Don't start moaning in a few weeks' time when the spring statement on finances is issued and we see the huge cuts which are now being planned to public services. I bet some of you feel silly now for changing your Facebook status to include the Ukrainian flag.